We're still waiting to hear and to learn more about the funeral arrangements for retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. She passed away yesterday at the age of 93. In 1981, O'Connor was the first woman to become a United States Supreme Court justice after being appointed by President Ronald Reagan. She went on to serve on the High Court for 24 years, retiring in 2006. Although she was appointed by President Ronald Reagan, she played a role as being a pivotal swing vote during her time on the bench. Justice Samuel Alito summed up her impact, calling her appointment a pivotal event in the history of the Supreme Court and the nation. Joining me now, I have the honor of having Fianna Evangelist, partner and co-chair of the global litigation practice at the law firm of Gibson and Dunn. She also clerked for Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. I want to thank you so much for joining me this morning. I thought, a lot of us know of Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. You clerked for her, but you also knew her on a more personal level. So can you share with our viewers your first the kind of significant interaction with her?
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for having me. I'll never forget the first time I met the justice. I was actually clerking in Los Angeles at the time, and she called me to set up an interview. And she said, "You don't need to fly all the way to Washington. We'll wait until I'm in Phoenix, and you can come see me there." And so I flew to Phoenix, and she drove to the airport herself to pick me up.
The Supreme Court justice picked you up herself?
She did.
And was that her style from what you knew about her?
It absolutely was. She was so warm. She was so kind. She was so generous. She was always thinking of others and what she could do to help and to make them feel at ease. And then she took me to lunch.
So I have to ask you, as a female lawyer, you're a litigator, in a typically male-dominated world, was it specifically her in her role as the first female Supreme Court justice that made you want to clerk for her?
Oh, absolutely. She changed the legal profession for everyone, but for me, she changed my life. I'm so grateful, and I was so honored to be able to clerk for her. There was no greater honor and no bigger dream that I ever had.
So one quote that she wrote that I thought was really important to share with you and our viewers, I think kind of really sums up a lot about her. It was in Roe v. Wade, which people may not know. She was a part of the decision and kind of the major decision of the majority in that case. She emphasized the importance of precedents, and that's kind of always been at issue as of late when we talk about SCOTUS justices. And she said the court must take care to speak and act in ways that allow people to accept its decisions on the terms the court claims for them as grounded truly in principle, not as compromises with social and political pressures. I mean, that sounds to me like somebody who was a principled person who understood that the highest court of the land was creating precedent for all Americans.
Absolutely. She was an incrementalist. She believed in common sense and also compassion. She knew exactly where her heart was, and she was a brilliant lawyer and a brilliant justice.
And you had the opportunity to clerk with her on her last full year when she served on that bench. What was it like to be a part of that very active term?
It was historic, and it was so sad for all of us, but particularly her clerks, to hear about her retirement. It was the end of such a significant chapter. And so for us to be there, I remember the day when she told us, she took us out on a hike. She made us sandwiches, as she was known to do, and she sat us down and she told us, and the gravity of that moment and what it meant for our country weighed on us, and also just the feeling that we were so grateful that we got to be there for her last term.
So I also want our viewers to understand that not only was she a brilliant jurist, but this is somebody that you actually kept in touch with after you clerked with her. What kind of continuing relationship did you have with the justice after you clerked?
We stayed in very close touch. I remember when she was the Grand Marshal of the Rose Parade in Los Angeles, and she came and I rode with her, and she invited me to that with her. I visited her frequently. I went to Stanford to hear her speak. She kept her clerks close. She treated us like family. She called our children her grand clerks. She could not have been more warm and loving and wonderful as a justice and as a mentor, really, to all of us. and to me.
So how does it make you feel to know that when she first went out into the job market, she couldn't even get a job, and then she finally got a job offer as a legal secretary, and then consider the trajectory of her career? I mean, what is it for somebody who spent such quality time with Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor? What do you think about that when you hear that about her history?
It's so remarkable. And to think back to the way the legal profession was, it's unbelievable. She has changed it for all of us. She opened the doors for all of us behind her. She made it possible for thousands of women to go to law school, to become lawyers, to think that anything was possible. And I'm among them.
Fiona Evangelos, the co-chair of the Global Litigation Group at Gibbs & Dunn, which, by the way, viewers, this is a very big deal to have her here. Thank you for being here and sharing that insight into the justice. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie.